Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. And today I'm doing some book recommendations for rugged romances. I've seen some where people did like wild man romances or like, you know, I don't know what else to wrap this up as, but I wanted to do it kind of as like rugged, meaning that the hero is rugged or it takes place in like an uncivilized area or we are, you know, stranded in some places or things like that. So I kind of grouped a few different things together and so that I could, you know, spread it out a little more than some people did, because I think if I just did like wild man romances, we would all have the same recommendations. And even as it is, a couple of mine are going to be what's on some other people's videos, but I'm always encouraged to include those in mine because it's like, well, mine might be the first one that you see or something like that, right? So I'm going to go through this list and tell you why I think that they're rugged and why I like these books. That's how we're going to do it, okay? That's what's happening here. So the first two that I'll start with are the ones that are probably on everyone else's list, but that I genuinely adore. The first one is Love in the Wild by Emma Castle. This is a standalone romance. It is a Tarzan and Jane retelling. This is the one that kind of swept the nation. I actually want to do a reread of this because the audiobook recently came out and Shane East does the voice of Thorn. Because yeah, the name of the hero, his name is Thorn. This is actually a modern day set thing, and our heroine, she's gonna go on like a photographic like safari jungle tour, and they end up being attacked by poachers and everyone gets murdered, and she's about to get raped and killed when this wild man swings in and kills the men who are gonna kill her, and he takes her to his jungle treehouse. And he knows English only a little bit, but he is quickly picking it back up because he ended up being abandoned. Like his family was in a plane crash and he got left there because his family all died. And he was raised by apes, so it's that same kind of thing. He was raised by gorillas, that same kind of Tarzan vibe. And so he has heard English spoken before, and then he actually does have some contact with one specific human. So he does know how to speak a little bit. And spending time with our heroine, he quickly picks it back up. But she is able to communicate. First off, like he thinks that, wow, it's a mate who looks like me. It's time to get it on, which I just love. I also love how he's still able to understand what consent is, and so there's some really beautiful stuff with our heroine explaining to him, you know, no, we can't just sleep with each other, or we can't just have sex just because, but it's really sweet. And there ends up being kind of some like adventure parts to this. Obviously we're in the jungle and there's a mystery of who this man is who's been living in the jungle for 20 some years, and is he important? Do people know that he's missing? What is going on? So I really enjoyed this book, and yeah, I really want to listen to the audiobook, so I'll probably do that at some point. Then there is this series called Midnight Sun series by Lynne Burke, and these books are Wilderness, Wildling, and Wildfire. They all take place in, I can't remember if it's Alaska or if it is just like a Canadian wilderness, but they all take place in kind of remote locations. This first book, Wilderness, is about this ex-pilot who he was in a plane crash and was one of the only people to survive. And he decides to kind of become a recluse. So he bought this cabin in the middle of nowhere, and he's going to go and stay there for a while to kind of just be disconnected. And he ends up having a one-night stand in this small village with someone before he's gonna go there. And when he leaves his one-night stand because he needs to make it to the hangar so that he can meet his pilot, it turns out that the woman he had a one-night stand with and then ditched was the pilot. So he ends up getting dropped off, and she ends up being his only link to civilization because every so often she will stop in with supplies. He ends up going through a lot of stuff while he's staying in this small space, and when she comes to visit him, he's starved for a few things, and not just the food. Then Wildling is very disturbing. It's actually about this woman who, I think she's like 26, 27, who she's been kind of flirting and talking with this man who seems to be about like 40-ish, and he's actually looking for a wife to live with him, and she doesn't have really much going on for her in this small village. So she agrees to marry him and moves with him to his homestead in the Canadian wilderness. And it turns out he has an 18-year-old son who he has treated horribly. He abuses him physically and emotionally and verbally. And very quickly, there grows to be a connection between this new stepmother and her stepson. And this man who she thought she was marrying turns out to be this horribly cruel and abusive man. And so both of these two are trapped there with him. Now, the third book actually takes place about 20 years later and is about the children of the two couples that I have previously mentioned and their love story, which is kind of cool. I was not expecting that when I read Wildfire. And so it's the daughter of the one couple and son of the other couple, and they are childhood friends who then have this misunderstanding when there's maybe going to be something romantic between them, and it ends up kind of setting them back quite a long time. And then a few years later, they end up meeting up again. When she goes on a writing retreat, her parents kind of meddle and tell this young man, like, hey, she's going to be alone at the cabin for this amount of time. You should go visit her because she really has been, like, missing you all this time. So, and Wildfire has something to do with it. So all three of these books, they all have a lot of trigger warnings. Please look them up. They are dark romance, so I'll say that. I'll tell you which of these are dark romance because I do have a mix of books that aren't. Like, I wouldn't call Love in the Wild a dark romance. That one has triggers of death of a family member, but not really anything else. But yeah, the Midnight Sun series, definitely look up some trigger warnings on those because there's a lot and they're all different in each one. Then I was going to mention the other one that most people mention, Transcendence by Shay Savage. Sorry, my list is all over the place. Why do you guys even watch me? I'm just so scatterbrained. No, I'm just kidding. Transcendence is a kind of sort of fantasy, historical. It's a hard one to explain, but this is a caveman romance. And it's actually told from the POV of the caveman, who is of a lesser mental capacity. And I'll explain why that's important. And I don't mean lesser mental capacity as in mentally abnormal. I mean, he is literally not evolved to the same point as Homo sapiens sapien, okay? This woman, he ends up finding a woman in one of his hunting traps, and he has been living alone for months and is actually very close to death. He's living on autopilot. Winter is coming, and he knows that he won't make it through this last winter. And then when he goes to check his traps, he discovers that a woman dressed in very strange clothes, and we as the reader can tell that they are modern clothes, has found his trap. And he is so happy because he is no longer alone. But this woman, she's nothing like anyone he's seen before. She makes weird noises with her mouth. She doesn't know how to hunt or take care of herself at all. But he doesn't care because he's found his mate and he's going to do everything he can to take care of her and make sure that she's happy. This book spans the whole life of our caveman and his mate, and it is beautiful. This is a tearjerker, but this is a beautiful, beautiful story, and it is a survival story. It is love in tough times. It is hopeful. It is painful. It is absolutely beautiful, and I'll tell you, it took a lot of convincing for me to read this book. I had been hearing about it for a while, but I only read this book because Smart Women Read Romance did an episode, and I heard Juliet just like crying about this book and how beautiful it was. And I was like, okay, I have to do it. And so I read this book, and it's like, there's a companion novella that goes with it, and it is, this was a 6-star read before I had 6-star reads. Like, I didn't have 6-star reads before. And it's fantastic. Okay. All right. So that one, yeah. All right, then there is Feral King by Sparrow Beckett. This one is a dark romance. This is a menage romance. It also has a virgin hero. There's lots of kink and BDSM going on. He is a blacksmith, a modern day blacksmith. He is a recluse. His family hires for him this woman to kind of be his companion and like make sure that he's taking care of himself basically. And he has some sexual kinks that he has not been able to practice with anyone before. Again, dark romance, many triggers for this one, for the past of our hero, as well as in the sexual relationship that he has with this woman who comes to be his companion, as well as involving his best friend. This is part of a duology. The reason I put this on my rugged romances is that for this being a, like a modern day one, because he's a recluse and he kind of lives off on his own and he's a blacksmith and he's just, oh, there's just a vibe of ruggedness about him. He's also tattooed and pierced everywhere, and it's so good. But this one, definitely he's a very strict, controlling dom. So know that with this one. Like, this is a dark romance, but it's so delicious. Like, it's so good. I have some other Sparrow Beckett on my TBR, and I really want to get to it at some point. All right, then I have a couple historicals to talk about, so this will be fun. So the first one is called In Want of a Wife by Joe Goodman. And I actually read this one pre-Booktube. I read this one maybe almost 10 years ago. And it is literally as it says. So this is a mail order bride Western. I believe it was like the first American historical that I ever read, right? Like besides Laura Ingalls or something, which technically isn't historical. It was like pretty much contemporary at the time, right? But this one is about this rancher who decides he is ready for a wife and a family. And so he had, it's kind of funny how it happened. Like, the setup of this is like complicated to explain. But anyway, this woman, she was writing to him from England, and he had agreed. Is she in New York or is she in England? I can't remember. But either way, he lives in Montana out west, and she lives east. And her sister snuck her own picture into the envelope. And so when he comes to pick her up, he's looking for her sister and not for her. And he feels like he was tricked. And you'd have to read it. No, he's not a bad guy. He's not being like, you know, he was looking for a certain type of woman. He was looking for this like bigger, stronger, tougher kind of girl. And our heroine is actually really kind of like dainty. She's tough. She's still tough, but she's kind of a dainty, softer person. And so he's like, I thought I was getting this like tough chick ready to take care of my homestead. And I got this like proper lady. But he is a nice man, and he's like, well, I'll leave it up to you. You know, I still need a wife, and it sounds like things kind of got a little messed up, but I will still marry you if you want to marry me. And so, yeah. And so then this is a Western. Like, I love homesteading type of stuff. But there's also some fun history in this one. This one does have some trigger warnings in it. I'm glad I remembered before I was filming. I was like, oh yeah, to tell. Our hero, he has a past of some trauma to him. He was molested by his stepmother, I think. But he was in kind of a twisted relationship with her. And then our heroine, she had a forced abortion happen to her. So I'll just tell you that because I don't want to dance around it. Like, that's the two traumas that they have gone through. And so this story isn't told in a very dark way though. Like, those things are revealed in kind of a like tasteful way. You know, this isn't hardcore dark romance historical, but I just wanted to be honest because both of those are pretty big triggers to be in a book like this, but I love this story. I actually think I should do a reread of this soon. It's been quite a while, but I loved this book. And I think it's probably my favorite like American historical I've ever read. So then, you know, it's been too long since I've talked about Duncan here. So let's throw up Bound to a Warrior. My friend Tori just recently read this book, and I'm so glad that she did. I think a few of my friends have started reading some Donna Fletcher. I need to continue my journey. I've been into some darker romances lately, and Donna Fletcher writes these really kind of like fun romp of a historical. But the reason why this one is rugged is that it starts with our two main characters. It is Mercy and Duncan. They are tied together. They are shackled together because they are both prisoners of the king for different reasons. And they end up, to get away from the guards that have them captive, they jump off a cliff together. They have to have complete trust in each other. And they are stuck, tied together for a very long time. Like, they are stuck, shackled together for a good part of the book, and they have to survive together until they reach Duncan's family. And so there is a lot of like sleeping beside each other, and they need their clothes to dry sometimes, and they're very honest, and like, this should be an enemies to lovers situation, but it's a friends to lovers situation. But they are battling the elements. They're trying to stay warm. And there are practicalities that come with that. Like, it's not all sexy, you know? There are definitely moments where it's sexy and where we look at our bodies and we're like, you know, I have to be naked right now. And I love that Mercy didn't turn into a shrieking violet about this. She was like, no, like, we need to take our clothes off so they dry. And we also need to huddle together so we don't die. Like, I understand. And I just loved how Duncan was respectful. And I love how she appreciated him being respectful and didn't assume the worst of him because they were stuck in this situation together, if that makes sense. But this definitely fits as like a wild romance for me because a good part of the book, they are trekking through the highlands and trying to stay warm and having to stay in old barns and try to feed each other. Like, it's so good. And I think it's really romantic. Duncan is one of the more romantic heroes that I've ever read, and he's on my book boyfriends list. I just really appreciate him. Then I quickly want to mention Haven by Rebekah Weatherspoon. I believe, I'll put a picture if I pick the right one, but specifically the first one in this trilogy is about a woman who she is on a trip with her brother. They are going hiking and they get attacked, and her brother gets murdered, and the men are then chasing after her. She's able to escape, and she stumbles up to the front door of this guy who lives in the mountains, and he is able to rescue her and kill the men who are coming after her. And then what I love Rebekah Weatherspoon. I really do. I love her stories. So anyway, this is rugged. This is terrifying what happened to her. And so all of that trauma that we're talking about, that happens in like the prologue or like the first couple chapters of this book. But then our heroine, she goes back to her life and she's not able to just go back to normal, right? She traumatically saw her brother die. She was almost assaulted, and she just doesn't know how to handle it all. And so I can't remember if it's a few months, if it's a year or whatever. She ends up going back to this town to meet up with the man who rescued her because she wants to, you know, kind of claim herself back. And now our hero, the series is called Beards in Bondage, by the way. And so our hero is a dom, and he noticed, you know, they end up coming to a deal where she's like, could I stay with you and kind of experience you sexually for a while? Because I'm kind of into you. And he's like, well, I'm kind of into you. Let's see how it goes. And so, yeah. So they live in his mountain cabin and do kinky things together for a while. These books are all pretty short. If I had a detractor from Rebekah Weatherspoon, is that her books are too damn short. Because she writes fantastic stories, and they're always too short for me. I mean, I'll just be honest. I want my pages. I want some pages to my story, and they're never long enough for me. So that fits in the rugged story for me. Now, I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to mention Dead Man Walking by Giana Darling. You could probably say this about this whole MC series if you wanted to, but I particularly, Priest is my favorite character from this series. Like, he's my favorite hero, which is crazy because Daddy Zeus is okay, but Daddy Zeus is like a lot. Priest is a man of few words. He is an enforcer and a torturer, and he is a sadist, and it's delightful. He's a serial killer. Like, he admits it. He's like, I have found the perfect job where I get to be a serial killer, and it's working for my MC. You know, that's like what it is. And then we have our heroine, who is the younger sister of one of the other characters, and she has had a thing for Priest for a while, and she knows that she hasn't been like old enough for him yet. And she's ready to like make her move. And he's like, I'm way too brutal for you. It's not gonna work. And she's like, you don't know me. You don't know what I want. Like, I want what you are. And so this one really fits into rugged for me, just because I feel like MC World like really does fit into rugged, just because like, he is a savage. Like, and I mean that in the term of like, he is brutal and cruel, and he does it in the name of his club, and it's disturbing. Some of it is very disturbing. There is like blood play and cutting and things that happen in this one, so check out the trigger warnings for that. There are some scenes of graphic torture that happen, so be aware of that. But there was something about this one that just really worked for me, more so than some of the others in the series did. Then I want to throw up The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea by Amelia Wilde. And this is funny. My friend Tori also read this one, and she just couldn't quite get why I loved it. And I get that. 2 reasons. This is only the first book in a trilogy, and it's only 200 pages. So here's the thing. You might want to wait till the whole trilogy is out. The second one doesn't come out until April, I think. This book is about Poseidon, and yes, they mean like Poseidon, as in there's 3 brothers there's 3 series of 3 books by this author. There's one about Zeus, there's one about Hades, and this is going to be the one about Poseidon. And so this book reminded me a lot of Sea of Ruin, in that we have a heroine who, she's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and she ends up getting kidnapped by this pirate who wants to ransom her back to her family, and she is going to try everything that she can to get away from him. And Poseidon, he is an asshole sometimes, and there are some scenes in this book that are just hard for people to read. Like, this is a dark romance, this is a captor-captive romance, and it has a cliffhanger because this is going to be 3 books. So something that I would say, because we've had this discussion, like, pricing for ebooks is hard. Like, it's strange. Because again, this book is only 200 pages. It's basically novella length. And there's going to be 3 books, which means total, there's going to be like 600 pages to this story. Why couldn't this book just come out as 1 book? And people want to say like, oh, that's price gouging, or that's this or that. But think about it. If you're an indie author, maybe you need to have the book coming out every couple months to keep meeting your expenses, instead of waiting till you're finished writing the whole book and putting out 1 book and only being able to promote it 1 time. If it's broken into 3 parts and you're able to do that, maybe that's more consistent income for you. Like, I just try to think of it that way, right? And some people maybe want to write their books shorter so people can get through more of them. That's a choice for them to make. I'm not an author, so until I am one day, I try to refrain from having opinions about that. I know what I'm willing to pay for and what I'm not. I'm sorry that this is a side tangent, but my point being is, like, I understand if you would want to wait to read these books until like all 3 of them are out, or maybe you don't want to pay $4.99 for 200 pages. Like, I get it. But I just really enjoyed the story being told. I like the degradation a little bit in here. I like when a hero thinks that he's evil, and then he is, you know, shocked when he comes up against a heroine who's like, you're not going to break me no matter what. And I like that. And I'm very excited to see where it's going to go next, because the cliffhanger of this was crazy. But he's definitely a rugged pirate man. I love a modern day pirate situation, and I was here for this story. Then I want to talk about Bride of the Frontier by Hayley Faiman. This is a tough one to start with because this is actually the 3rd book in the Prophecy of the Sister series. Look at the back of this too. I love it. But this one takes place in it's a parallel universe that is, has lots of different stuff going on. Sorry, I have to be vague. But the first book in this series is actually called Bride of the Traitor. And, I just love it. I love fantasy books. I love the world that Hayley Faiman is building. And, I feel like you maybe could start with any one of the books in the series if you wanted to, but you would need to read all of them to fully know what's going on. But I don't know. This one has Bertie Collins is one of the sisters, and she gets pulled into Colt James's world where he is the leader of it. And he immediately is very suspicious of her because he has these crazy feelings towards her, which this is a fated mate story. Each of these sisters is getting drawn to her fated mate, who are these really powerful men. And once each of the sisters finds their man, they're going to enact this prophecy, this is what's called a prophecy of the sisters, and be able to like save the world from an oncoming danger that's going to happen. So yeah, but this one is just super rugged. He has a magical connection with horses, as well as there are these magical lions that protect his land that he has a telekinetic connection with. It's pretty cool. So I just want to throw this one in there. I know this series doesn't work for everyone. There's a lot of sex in it and the plot is sometimes confusing, but I don't care. I love it. I can't wait to read the last one. I don't even know what it's going to be called yet, but I'm sucked into this journey and I don't ever want to leave. I love it. And then the last one I want to mention real quick is actually a desert island story. This is a male-male romance. It's called Beyond the Sea by Kiera Andrews. And this is actually about two straight men who are on a plane, a private plane that crashes. And so it is the co-pilot and the passenger who are left alive. One of them is a rock star. Another one is the co-pilot. And they get stuck on this island together. And they end up developing feelings for each other while they are stuck. So this is rugged because it's a survival story. They have to build shelter and find food and take care of each other. And love kind of blossoms while that's happening. So, all right. My throat is getting sore. I filmed a few videos in a row today. So I'm going to wrap it up for the day of filming. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you find some nice rugged men to read about. Let me know what your favorite rugged romances are. Let me know what qualifies things as rugged for you. I'd love to hear, you know, if you agree with some of these, if you've read them, or what you're looking for in a rugged romance. So thank you so much for watching. I put up videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye.